Welcome to an example in which we're simplifying this expression to a single trig function. So how are we going to do it? These are not easy for sure. One thing that you want to recognize is that these two terms right here, they both have cosine in common. So you can factor out a cosine. I don't know if I'm making any sense. Let me show you. So let me come down here. The top, I'm not going to change the top at all. But on the bottom, I'm going to factor out a cosine. And then maybe I've changed the color to help make it more clear. Put parentheses. And this is going to be a 1 minus cosine squared of x. Let me help you to see what I just did there. Do you see that if I was to multiply this cosine in, it would go right back to these guys? Do you see that? Right? Because cosine times 1 would be cosine, and cosine times cosine squared would go back to cosine cubed. I just factored out a common term, a common cosine, because they both had cosine. It's just reverse distribution, isn't it? If I redistributed this, it would go right back, wouldn't it? Cosine times 1 would be cosine. Cosine times cosine squared would be cosine cubed. That's called factoring. It's just reverse distribution. Okay, great. So what? Why do we care? Well, because now we can do some nice things. We can cancel these cosines like that. Now you might say, yeah, I could have done that right back here. Just canceled them right there. No, you can't actually. I mean, you could, but it'd be wrong. Let me point that out. This is my Costco rule. I call it the Costco rule. That is, you cannot cancel items that are glued together. That's a G there. Glued together with adding, subtracting symbols. Right? See this minus sign right here? This is a big deal. He's gluing this and this together. It's kind of like Costco. If you shop at Costco or Sam's Club, those big warehouse stores, you can't buy just one milk. They'll glue two of them together. You can't bring your scissors to Costco and cut it and say, thanks, I just want to buy one. You can't do it. You buy them both or you buy nothing. They sell in bulk, right? Well, that's what pluses and minuses, adding and subtracting symbols, are like in algebra. When, not just in trig, but this is all the way up in higher math. You need to know this rule, that when things are plussed and minused together, you can't break the bond. So you can't say, I just want to do like that. It's okay in the top. There's no glue on the top. But on the bottom, you're breaking that glue bond. No, it's illegal. Now, you might wonder, well, okay, I see that. Okay, you can't do that. But you did it right here. Yeah, right here, they're not glued. You think, yeah, well, that's cool. I didn't break that bond, did I? I didn't take the 1 or the cosine squared. They're still glued together. They're still a happy package. I only took this guy who was times and this guy who was timesed. That's fine. It's only adding and subtracting that makes the glue bonds that we cannot break. So it's a very important rule. If you don't know that rule, you'll be doing illegal things all the time and not know it. Okay, let's keep going. So where does that leave us? We're left with sine of x on the top and 1 minus cosine squared of x on the bottom, right? Good so far? Now we're almost there. What are we going to do now? Well, this guy's got to jump off the page for you, or the screen. Do you know what that is? Do you recognize that? Let's go back to our formula sheet. 1 minus cosine squared. Back to our formula sheet. There it is. 1 minus cosine squared, sine squared. Remember, when you have sine squared or cosine squared with a 1, it's always going to be something you can do with that. 1 minus cosine squared is sine squared. Just like 1 minus sine squared would be cosine squared. All right, let's go back to the problem. That's not the problem. We've done a lot of problems here. So, okay, so that means that denominator now is going to become sine squared. Right? That denominator became sine squared. The numerator hasn't changed at all. It's still just sine of x, right? But the bottom changed. 1 minus cosine squared is sine squared. Okay, great. now what can we do? I think you see it now, don't you? Now we can say, oh, this sign cancels one of those guys, so we're left with 1 over sine x, aren't we? Because there's nothing left on the top. That's 1. You know that's what happens. Like if you have 2 over 6, you go 2 goes into 6, it's 1/3. Right? When the top cancels, it leaves a 1. Same thing with trig functions. When the sign on the top cancels one of those on the bottom, right? Or I could do it that way too if you want to be like extra clear. Sine squared means sine of x times sine of x, and we had one of them on the top. So one of these cancels one of these. You don't have to show all that. I think you already knew that. So the answer is 1 over sine x, isn't it? That's the answer to our problem. So that one was by no means easy. So all of that boiled down. We simplified all of that to be 1 over sine of x.